Well, hello and welcome to the latest edition of India Ideas. This is the show which is all about science and tech, innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm Gautam Roy. And today we're talking about the health tech sector among startups. It's a sector which has perhaps seen the highest surge or boom in COVID times in the pandemic phase. For instance, if you talk about one e-health platform, it has seen as much as a 600% growth in online health consultations since the lockdown started in March. The digital healthcare market in India it was $116.61 billion back in 2018, but now it's projected to grow at over 27% CAGR and reach a size of over $485 billion by 2024. Well, we have three representatives of the sector with us today, all quite different as far as what they do. And they are Dr. Gautam Wankhede, Director, Medical Affairs, MyLab Discovery Solutions, a biotech company which came up with India's first approved RT-PCR COVID testing kit. We've got Rahul Shingrani, co-founder, 10-3T Healthcare, which helps doctors with AI and patented technology to monitor patients' vitals using a wearable patch. And we'll talk about that with Rahul. And Ravi Teja Kondi also joins us, co-founder and CEO of iMums, which is an app to help soon-to-be mothers stay healthy through their pregnancy and deliver healthy babies. Welcome to you all. First, if I could ask you, Dr. Wankhede, in terms of what you have done, yours is a slightly different concern. It brings both perhaps algos and biotech together. Just tell us about how the journey started and the entire process of coming up with this testing kit in perhaps some record time.
Well, Gautam, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, as far as record time is concerned, so obviously what looks on the exterior is that we only work for 2 months. But as a company, we are a biotech-focused company. We are into manufacturing of state-of-the-art medical diagnostic kits for the last 4 to 5 years. So to say that something happened or technology can be brought up just in a couple of months is really tough. As a company, you have to be focused in getting in latest technologies. In our case, it is biotech, and others, there are other technologies which have to be brought to the country. So as a company, as I was telling you, we had got into the manufacturing of molecular diagnostic kits. We had a large number of firsts to our name, such as we were the first company of Asia to have the NAT test for blood donor screening, the first one in India for HIV, hepatitis B. And so when we came to know about this impending pandemic in late December, early January, our research team, we have a research lab based in Pune, they got going. They started finding out the genome. WHO made the genome public. And based on that genome, we started developing a kit. And by the end of February, we had a kit ready. And by March, we were the first ones in India to launch it.
Great. That sounds pretty fast to me, and that is something that science and tech enable you perhaps to do these days. That's the kind of progress that we have made. And Rahul, if I could ask you, in terms of your own device, that also brings technology of different kinds together, and must have been useful in this phase as well for physicians.
Yeah, absolutely. It combines various facets of, wearable engineering, device, industrial design, combined with hardware and software elements and AI elements to allow healthcare to continue from home. It has great application in the pandemic. Of course, there's a big need to shift patients outside hospital environments. There's a need to monitor patients from home. What our wearable technology does is it allows the capture of multi-lead ECG along with blood pressure and oxygen saturation just via wearing wearables on the body, and that information is transmitted continuously and in real time to physician dashboards remotely. Now, there's a great need for this in the pandemic. What we saw in the early stages of the pandemic, and there was a lot of noise around digital health making a big impact in the pandemic stage. In the early stages, I would say the first couple of quarters when the pandemic was on, there was a big need for critical care equipment only, like ventilators, of course, face masks, sanitizers, that kind of stuff, and ICU-oriented equipment. Gradually, and as as Gautam, in your opening segment, you spoke about the large macro fundamentals of the health market, digital health market. It's great, it's growing. Gradually, the pandemic requirement is also starting to meet that need, which is saying hey, we're the critical care part of the pandemic is now in place. Now let's actually see what long-lasting changes the health market can go through. And that's why devices like ours, which is a wearable device, allows freeing up of ICU beds, allows patients to be monitored remotely at a cost-effective manner. Now that kind of adoption is picking up as we're seeing.
Yes, certainly. That I think feeds into the home healthcare ecosystem that has been evolving through the pandemic as well. We'll talk about that too. And Ravi, Teja, if you could tell us about your app, I'm sure it must have been helpful for a lot of mothers to be during this particular phase as well. But you've been around for a while and you won the Atmanirbhar Bharat App Innovation Challenge as well. I think you were runners up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gautam. So definitely pandemic has been very challenging. So we are iMoms. We focus on the physical and emotional well-being of mothers during pregnancy, because that is what actually shaping the future generation. That is what actually deciding the health and happiness of future according to a lot of scientific research. The pandemic has been challenging for all of us, especially for the expecting mothers. The lack of going talking to the doctor, and one thing which we are not talking about is the emotional health. The emotional health is a challenging factor for all of us, but for to be mothers it is slightly higher. So we saw when the pandemic kicked in, we saw a lot of anxiety of thousands of the users who are expecting mothers, and we sort of try to fill in the gap with care and compassion. We sort of organizing so many live sessions with more than 180 leading doctors, ensuring them that everything is fine, stay at home, and taking care of their mental health as well.
Wonderful. That sounds great. It must have been helpful to a lot of mothers to be. But Gautam, just tell us in terms of what you have come up with so far, and you're devising newer technologies and things that can be used perhaps in a better way as well. You have come up with a larger kit too for testing more comprehensively. But just tell us what kind of impact has this pandemic had on the company? Its revenues and users must have been quite profound.
Well, I mean, if you want to look at the positives of it, one thing that has definitely happened across India, which has obviously helped us, is the acceptance of molecular diagnostics. It's the acceptance of modern diagnostics, something which India was completely lacking. Somehow we were just dragging our feet about it. Across the world, people have adopted genetic methods for detecting diseases, for detecting infections, cancers. Somehow that was lacking in India. We as a company, I mean, because that was our specialization, so we were telling all the hospitals, the government bodies that this is the future. Why not have modern diagnostic labs based on molecular technology in place for detecting even for basic diseases like malaria? But obviously, we were not, proactive on it. And unfortunately, this thing happened. And when this happened, we realized it's important to have a molecular lab. Way back in January, when this started, there was only one lab which was doing the COVID test in India.
Yes.
Now, more than 2,000. So obviously, our addressable market size has also grown considerably. Now that these labs are equipped with the molecular diagnostic capabilities, we manufacture a whole range of products. Apart from COVID, we have HIV, infections, cancers, genetic diseases. So now that they have the infrastructure in place, obviously they will make use of that infrastructure and start using the same platform for other diseases as well. And that's how, as a company, we will be benefited, because now that the modern technology has been accepted, our product range will also be accepted. And it's already being accepted now.
Right. Okay. And as far as the pandemic is concerned, Rahul, you guys, in any case, wearables is a worldwide market. There are a lot of global products in India as well. So the level of competition for you guys is pretty high. So tell us, keeping in view the competition, what sort of an impact did the pandemic have in terms of how your wearables are being adapted by different doctors and institutions like hospitals?
Right. I mean, I think Dr. Vankare had a great point to make, which is what the pandemic has done. It's been disastrous across the board for everyone, from a personal perspective to a business perspective as well. And it's been challenging in the sense that manufacturing of products has been affected, especially for the small startups like ours. Clinical trials that we need to conduct on a very routine basis is affected because hospitals haven't had the additional resources to conduct those. So those factors have been challenging for startups like ours. But what's happened, like Dr. Vankiri was saying, was that there is an acceleration in the shifting of perceptions of how digital health wearable devices can enter the clinical environment and can be used to offset some of the pressures that the clinical environment feels. So there's there's been an acceleration towards that. You're right in saying, Gautam, that there's a lot of competition out there. But when you drill down to it, the specifics of what a wearable does, what factors of remote monitoring you're using, it ends up being a very handful of players that are actually doing it at a very high clinical grade level. Most of the wearables out there are doing fitness-oriented monitoring. We are not in the fitness-oriented space. We're high fidelity ICU grade monitoring space. Just taking it outside the hospital and making it accessible to patients at home. So the big benefit, if you want to call it that, is the acceleration of the adoption mindset, which is, if you might know, notoriously slow in the healthcare space across the world, and for good reason. Healthcare changes slowly. The pandemic has pushed that in this direction of saying new technologies can enter the space, and we're trying to take advantage of that as much as possible.
Okay. Is that something that your experience also tells you, Ravi Teja, in terms of adaptation to tools such as these, which one never really thought of, say, 5 to 10 years earlier, that if a certain lady in the house is pregnant, if I speak about myself, I would suggest that, you look at this app, it might be very useful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Adoption to tools and adoption to digital consultations, as Mr. Rahul and Mr. Gautam were saying, it's been very high. We also saw the similar change. For example, earlier pregnant women used to, suppose someone is gestational diabetes, suffering from gestational diabetes. She used to note down, her blood glucose levels on a paper. Now there are many tools coming up, many apps and many innovations coming up, where she can directly, her vitals can be shown to her doctor, and remote care is also very prevalent. And one thing which we observed is there's a lot of shift in the mindset of doctors for the digital adoption. So there are, IMAMS is currently being recommended by more than 1,000 doctors. We have been evangelizing the whole concept through the doctors' fraternity, through the bodies like Foxy from a long time. So it was very, very challenging for them to adopt digital solutions, but this pandemic forced everyone to stay innovative and solve the problem at the hand. So adoption to digital tools, everything was very prevalent. Now, more consultations are, online, and more tools are being adopted very quickly.
Great. Now let's talk about the ecosystem as such, Gautam, because if you look at the startup ecosystem in the country, it's very robust. Health tech is being talked about a lot, especially since the pandemic hit, and the government has done its own bit where, encouraging that entire ecosystem, fostering its concern. What do you feel has been, the most useful as far as health tech is concerned in terms of government policy measures, and what more you think could the government be doing here?
One major thing that has happened is people have realized that it's not something which should be only restricted to the top tier cities, not only a Delhi, Bombay phenomena. This is something which happened across the country. So what that has enabled is, and that's also going to affect, the other speakers, Rahul and Ravi, is that it's not an urban-centric problem now. So a person in the tier 2, tier 3 city can access healthcare, or good, in our case, it's good diagnostics. In the other case, it could be good digital platforms. So I think it's kind of democratized or universalized the entire availability of healthcare technologies. That's one major advantage of, one of the major positives out of all those negatives of the pandemic.
Okay. And Rahul, in terms of how the government itself is now pursuing digital health as a national digital health mission. Before that, we had the national health policy. Now you have a data management policy as well coming up. It's a draft policy, and that will soon be adapted, where a lot of people who had some concerns related to privacy and surveillance, perhaps all those questions will be answered.
Absolutely, and they need to be answered. This is yet another function of the pandemic accelerating this change in healthcare. It's something that's been waiting to happen in India. In some ways, to get to the global standards, for example, the GDPR standards that are prevalent in Europe, and other privacy standards, HIPAA standards in the US. The national data policy starts to address some of these. There are concerns in that policy, but that's probably for another forum. It's a very detailed discussion to have. But the idea that both on the regulatory framework of biotech and medtech and digital health, and on the data-oriented frameworks, there is now the discussion has reached the mainstream. It's out there, and pandemic is one of the reasons why it's really being pushed faster. Certainly this generation and the next generation of innovators and entrepreneurs will benefit from a clarity and expectation. India has had a challenge in clarity of expectation in terms of the regulatory landscape. It's getting better now because there's a lot of everything is online. It's very transparent now. So this and the next generation will certainly, this has a knock-on, cascading, exponential growth effect. The clarity of regulatory landscape, and I think that's going to have a great positive effect as it goes forward.
Certainly. And Ravi Teja, in terms of government initiatives, of course, you've been a beneficiary of the App Innovation Challenge. So just tell us, did that help in you getting more word out as far as your app is concerned? And what other government measures, policy measures have helped you grow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, today things are much easier than how they were 5-6 years ago regarding any compliances, any policies or running a business. That is something which I've been hearing a lot. For us, like a young company like iMom's Atmanirbhar App Challenge is one of the major milestones which we crossed so far. So this whole exercise of identifying, innovators, and we competed with competitors which have more than 50x traction like us. But identifying innovation and the whole exercise of this Atmanirbhar App Challenge is very phenomenal from the government side, should I say? And personally, after winning the challenge, there was a lot of organic word out, and we started getting a lot of installs and a lot of recognition from various other platforms as well. So definitely this move by government is very, very much appreciated. And also the overall the way like maybe it's Startup India movement or any other policies, the current angel tax relaxation. So all these things which are very friendly for startups and very helpful.
Certainly. And Gautam, just tell us going forward, because my lab has had a raging success with the RT-PCR testing kit. But we do know that cases are coming down now. Testing will also reduce, and especially when vaccination takes place, we may not have, as far as COVID testing is concerned, as a huge line of business, and there might still remain some wariness as far as being there physically yourselves to give your samples and get yourselves tested for even other diseases. So is that something that you're factoring in as far as your own future is concerned, as to what kind of products should you be coming up with, what kind of services you should be coming up with?
Definitely, Gautam. So we are looking at the future. We are looking at opportunities where the number of testings can be done even at remote places. Maybe starting at home. Obviously, home is the most difficult one to carry out as far as a standardized test is concerned. But we have already come out with an completely automated system. So even if a lab is has very limited capabilities in terms of manpower, in terms of technical abilities, with our automated system, even a small lab can start doing these tests. We are planning to come out with an even smaller system which can go to even remote places. That's one. Plus, we are coming out with more rapid tests. For obviously, we were the first ones then to come out with the first antigen test kit for COVID-19. And as we speak, our research team is also developing some more tests. I can't give more details about these tests, but we're really excited with the range of tests coming up, and with the trust the government and the people have also given to healthcare.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Rahul? Wearables, you're in the wearable space, and right now your device is a very specific device for monitoring vitals, but wearables is a totally different market where health and fitness is also concerned. So you guys are looking at that segment as well?
Well, our expertise lies in being very domain strong and clinical domain strong.
Okay.
So if you look at if you look at Fitbit, for example, it's a whole different, it's like an FMCG product. It needs to be sold at a really high scale. On the other hand, what we are building is a niche tool that is in the clinical grade.
Yes.
And so our expansion, our future plans and our expansion also lies in that clinical grade space. One is the expansion of the number of vitals that you pick up. The devices start becoming smaller and smaller, until at some point the dream is that they're part of your skin, exoskin as it's called.
Okay.
It's just that. So the devices get smaller, the data collection keeps getting more and more continuous, and of course the data starts to give you predictive information, and that's one of the areas that we're working really hard in. For example, to give you a real situation, say you have a patient who has chronic issues such as diabetes, and then they're taking a certain drug. We can find out if there's a subtle change in the cardiac cycle as a response to that drug, because diabetes and cardiovascular disease have a lot of comorbidities. The data starts informing you if that's the right drug or not. And the smaller the devices get, the more advanced the data collection becomes, the more predictive the nature of healthcare becomes. And so a lot of
Naturally.
our work, our research is going into saying, let's identify narrow clinical needs and then build this vertical set of artificial intelligence that can really then start doing predictive kind of work to say, if you're on this kind of drug, you may suffer some kind of side effects in the long term, and therefore maybe you should have a change in drug. Obviously, these are futuristic goals, and we're working on them. But wearables and remote monitoring, data analysis is here to stay, and so we're excited about the future.
Yes, it does sound very, very technical and futuristic, and I hope that it works in the direction that you guys are seeking right now. And Ravi, what about you in terms of how the app is doing and where do you want to take it?
Oh, the app is doing really brilliant, Gautam. So the whole idea creating this app is to create a safe womb environment for pregnant women. Scientists, there is a lot of, the diseases like ADD, ADHD and bipolarity in children. There is 40x rise, right? And scientists are attributing all this cause to the increase in the stress environment of mother. So it was there before the pandemic also. And that is the reason that is the reason of inception of IMAMS. But after pandemic, the realization is much higher, and the adoption is very much higher. So in the whole pandemic, more than 1 lakh mothers have, performed more than 1.3 million minutes of meditation. And people are talking brilliant about the insights, and they're seeing tangible benefits in the outcome of the babies. So in history also, many such major events like world wars have created a lot of impact on the generations. So we are trying to save many mothers from having that impact passed through the babies. So thankfully, unfortunately for this pandemic, one good thing, one positive side we could see is there is a lot of realization. On top of the problems and chaos in expecting couple are facing, the pandemic had it. Mates are not coming, not able to visit the doctors. So the stress and emotional health awareness is much higher, and the need is much higher. So now people are realizing, and the adoption is much higher. So that is what we see. And in the future, we are going to expand our services across, right from pre-conception to the early childhood till the baby reaches 4 years of age, because this whole 4 or 5 years of period is going to decide the future of our generation, the coming generation. Yeah.
Definitely. And Gautam, as far as the getting into the health tech space, or even coming up with products for healthcare, that of course has again been a huge startup zone, really, because a lot of people started making face masks and sanitizers as well. But now we're seeing a glut in that market too. That demand is falling. So in terms of those who are looking to become entrepreneurs in the health tech or the health sector, what would your advice be to get a sustainable business going?
Right. I think one thing which is good, which is happening in India in the last couple of years, is the emphasis on Atmanirbhar. There's a lot of guidelines which have come out from the government which say that it's not important to, or they've kind of ruled out buying imported kits. So that gives a lot of boost to entrepreneurs who want to start developing their own, manufacturing or developing new products. Also, one thing which is really happening in India now is there's a lot of acceptance of products developed in India by the healthcare fraternity as well as the public. So for a newcomer who wants to get into the space, as long as the product is innovative, an Indian product is easily acceptable, something which was lacking 10 or 12 years back. We looked at an Indian product with a bit of skepticism. Now that has changed positively, and that gives a lot of boost to upcoming entrepreneurs.
Sounds great. And I hope that happens more and more, and we have more successful businesses going like yours, all three of you. Thanks for joining us today to talk about your business and the sector as well. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Gautam.
Thanks a lot.
जल्दी करो यार प्लीज जल्दी
दूसरा कोई